I'll just tell you my last job as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The role and the way it's described is you're the senior military advisor to the President, Secretary of Defense, and National Security Council. And one of the things I have had a chance to do throughout my career is mentor. And so today, instead of providing advice to the President, Secretary of Defense, National Security Council, I've got 5 points of advice I want to share, particularly to our cadets and midshipmen, but some of it may be applicable to some of the more senior folks in the audience as well. And so the 5 points of advice are, first, to define success, have attitude, trust but verify, challenge the status quo, and then fail to succeed. And so I have some stories to go with each one of those that I'm going to share with you today to kind of give you a picture of kind of how I think and partly how I got here. And so first, to define success. When I think about defining success, the first thing you want to do is figure out where you want to be. Is it getting to Friday of each week? Is it getting to the end of the month? For our cadets and midshipmen, is it getting to the end of the semester, getting to graduation, getting to your first duty assignment? You got to figure out how to define success. And part of that defining success is how do you talk to people to figure this out? And so for me personally, having followed this group of Vietnam vets, my father, retired Army colonel, 2 tours in Vietnam. When I was probably a junior in high school, going into my senior year, he told me, quote, 4 years in the military will not hurt you. And he talked to me about going to the academies. I told him I'm not that interested in military. And then he encouraged me to apply for ROTC scholarships because he had taught ROTC after his second tour in Vietnam. And so I applied for all 3, Army, Navy, and Air Force. I got to the interview level for all 3. I did not go to the Navy interview because I knew for a fact I didn't want to be in the Navy. I'm being honest. I'm 17 years old. Navy wasn't for me. I ended up getting both a Army and Air Force scholarship. And I was going to pursue a dual degree in architectural and civil engineering. And my dad said that he knew how the Army assignment process worked. He said, well, if you go Army, there's no guarantee you'll be an engineer. If you go Air Force, you'll be an engineer. So I went Air Force. And so my plan was to do 4 years in the Air Force as an Air Force engineer, get out, and then move back to Texas. I almost quit ROTC after the first semester because they really wanted me to be all involved, and I wanted to hang out and play intramurals with the guys in my dorm. And so when I came home for Christmas, my dad said, well, the only thing you have to do for the scholarship is go to class and go to lab. And so that's what I did for the next year and a half, and I was on the drill team because my dad had taken me to a junior ROTC drill competition when I was in 6th grade, and I just loved the precision. Then I got to go to ROTC summer camp and got a ride in a T-37, which is our 2-seat, back then, 2-seat training jet. You had the helmet, the parachute, the mask, you're out doing acrobatics. And when I came back from that, I go, God, that was fun. And I looked around because I'm pretty competitive. The other folks, we had pilot slots already. And said, well, if they can get one, I think I can get one of those. And so I ended up coming back to school, and at that time, they were not giving scholarships to pilots. And so I was told to sit on it for a semester, so I did. And then I came back in the spring and said, no, I want to do this. And so first semester of my senior year, I was the Cadet Corps Commander. Our professor of aerospace studies, our 06, called me down to the front and started reading me the riot act about how the Corps was not doing well. Then he said, oh, by the way, you got a pilot slot. And so, and they let me keep my scholarship. And so the interesting thing there was I was an in-state Texas resident. My tuition was $4 a credit hour. So it cost me about $250 for tuition and fees, $300 for my books, and back then you were getting $100 a month. So for less than $1,000, that 4 years turned into almost 40 years. I think the other aspect when you start thinking about defining success is you can't do this by yourself. I believe success takes help, failure you can do alone. And so I had a plan of, I'd script the first part of my plan, 4 years and get out. That didn't work. when I was a captain, I had an opportunity to be the aide to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. It wasn't a job I applied for, but as I was finishing up that job, I had been selected for major. I was getting ready to go to our mid-level school, Air Command and Staff College, and you had to fill out your dream sheet of what schools you wanted to go to, and then once you finished that, it said at the bottom you're supposed to say what you want to do when you finish school. And so I'd filled out the form for myself and said, after I finish school, I want to go back to flying. And about 2 days later, it came back out of the chief's office with a big red line through it that says, staff tour. And so we were walking through the Pentagon, and I remember exactly where we were to this day. And I asked the chief, the captain talking to the 4-star, hey, sir, I'm just kind of curious, why the staff tour? He says, well, I talked to the chief of Air Force personnel. Sounded like a good idea. And that was the end of the conversation. And so about a week or two later, I was at a reception, and by that time, I'd already had a couple cocktails. And I saw the chief of Air Force personnel, the 3-star, and I went over to him and said, hey, sir, I'm just kind of curious, why the staff tour? He said, well, why don't you come by my office on Monday morning, and I'll explain it to you. And so he took out a legal pad of paper, and the first thing he did was map out my life. Our oldest son at the time was about 18 months old, and my wife was pregnant with our second child. And he mapped out when my kids would be in college and when I could retire from the Air Force. And then he started talking to me about my career. And he started talking to me about timing of things that I should be thinking about and jobs I should hold in order to be competitive further into my career. And then he asked me, so what's your complaint? I said, I'm not going to fly for 5 years. He said, don't worry about it. I did not fly for 4 years and 11 months. But I was still flying as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Matter of fact, my last flight was in January. And if I had done what I wanted to do, I actually would have probably retired at 20 years as a lieutenant colonel. And it was just the aspect of listening to people and then thinking about how you define success. And I think the last story I'd share with this particular piece of advice is how do you, not just get one mentor, have a lot of mentors. When I shop on Amazon, I read a lot. I'm not an impulse buyer. I read a lot of the reviews, the good reviews and the bad reviews, to figure out where I want to go. And then at the same time, I talk to my family. And so when I was in 1-star, United States Central Command, we had a Sunday dinner with our boys. They were in high school at the time. And we'd been bouncing around. Our oldest son was in his 3rd high school. The youngest was in his 2nd. And I was debating about whether I should continue to serve. And when I asked our sons, they said, Dad, you need to keep going. Having no idea that I would go from 1-star to 4-star, be the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the first African-American to serve as a service chief in our nation's history, and then go on to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And so just the aspect of how you define success. The last thing I'd say on this, on defining success, is never take short-term satisfaction at the expense of your long-term goals. So as you figure out what your long-term goals are, you're going to have things that are going to come up that are going to feel like a really good idea, but you got to think about it. Is it going to box you in from not allowing you to do what you want to do in the long term? Next is to have attitude. I'm a huge NFL fan. I happen to be a Cowboys fan. I know. I'm already looking at next year. It's painful. But I'm also a big Patrick Mahomes fan. We happen to go to the same university, both went to Texas Tech. And the one thing I like about Patrick Mahomes is he's got attitude. If they're losing in the last 2 minutes of a game, I can guarantee you he's not come to the huddle and go, I'm not sure we can do this. I don't think I have it in me. He probably comes to the huddle and goes, I have complete confidence we're going to score, we're going to win. Those are the kinds of things that, as you think about and you build out your plan for success, is have confidence in the plan that you're trying to achieve. And even if you get put in very difficult situations, have confidence that you're doing the right thing. And I'll take myself back to January 15th, 1991, flying an F-16 out of Homestead Air Force Base just outside of Miami. Had an aircraft I was flying got struck by lightning, caught on fire, and our checklist says if fire persists, eject. So that's what I did. Ejected, spent about 15 minutes in the Everglades, and that's why I got my call sign, Swamp Thing. I was pretty confident it was the right thing to do. I had enough time in the parachute to think about, I hope there's nothing down there, because that was my first tour of the Everglades. And when they picked me up, a Coast Guard helicopter picked me up, I was covered in swamp mud over my left side, because that's where I landed in the mud and muck. I didn't fly for a week. The next week, I flew 7 times. We typically only flew about 3 times a week. But having attitude and confidence, getting back in the airplane after ejecting, after a major emergency, is important. So you got to be confident in what you're doing. And as you define your parts for success, you also need to have a plan B. And so when I mentor people, I don't tell them you can't do something. I just talk to them not only what they want to do, but I also talk about their plan B. And some people, I tell them, you need a bigger plan B, because your plan A is going to be a little more difficult to achieve. Trust but verify. What I do think about is the aspect of, as you're looking and thinking about where you want to go and talk to mentors, don't talk to one, talk to many. And you can also talk to your friends, and they'll tell you certain things about what they believe, but trust but verify. And so when I was a second lieutenant, we were finishing up our F-16 training. The way the assignment process worked back then was the personnel center, there was 12 of us in our class. They would give us 12 locations that we could go to. And if we could all agree amongst ourselves, we'd send it back to the personnel center, and then we'd all go to our respective assignments. And so I wanted to go to Kunsan Air Base in the Republic of Korea. And so did 2 of my other classmates. But there was only, for the 3 of us, there was only 2 slots at Kunsan. Homestead Air Force Base was my second choice. And so my classmates said, hey, CQ, why don't you just go ahead and take your second choice and we'll send it in, we'll call it good. I go, I don't want to do that. So we sent it in with all 3 of us wanting to go to Kunsan, nobody wanting to go to Homestead. All 3 of us went to Kunsan, nobody went to Homestead. If I had actually followed their advice, I would have gone and had a completely different career than I had. Which leads me to the point of some advice I got as a second lieutenant. My father attended a prayer breakfast. It was a POW from Vietnam that told him, that he passed on to me, that always ask for what you want. Because the worst you can be told is no, but you can't be told if you don't ask. And so I've used that throughout my career. I always ask for what I want, but I also got to make sure that what I'm asking for is actually I'm somewhat qualified for. It goes back to the aspect of having a plan B, because you may not get what you want, but you got to think about the other places you might go. I also believe in the aspect when you trust but verify is sometimes the easiest thing for people to do is tell you no. If it's something you really believe in, I think you need to go through what I say the 5 stages of no, like the 5 stages of grief. Hell no. No. We'll think about it. Not a bad idea. We should be doing it already. If it's really important to you, go through all 5 stages. It's too easy to give up on the first hell no, but go through all 5 stages if it's really important to you. Next, challenge the status quo. Status quo is it means the mess we're in. And so I really do think about if you want to change things, and as the Air Force Chief, I wrote Accelerate, Change, or Lose. If you want to change things, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. You have to challenge the status quo. And as you do that, you got to look at opportunities of how you would change and how you actually communicate the change that you're trying to achieve. And sometimes you got to buck the system. And when I was a wing commander, this happened twice. When I was a wing commander in Kunsan Air Base, Korea, and I was a wing commander at Aviano Air Base in Italy. And we were getting inspected probably more than I thought we should. And it was taking off priorities off the things we were trying to achieve for my airmen in the base, and particularly as at Aviano, because we had one of our squadrons getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. in a major inspection. And I wanted to tell the inspectors, when you come to the base, here's how this is going to happen. Because typically when they come in, they all dictate how they're going to inspect you. And I go, well, let me tell you how this is going to work. And so I called them. Then I followed up with an email. And then when they came, I told them, exactly how we're going to do this and which airmen they're going to deal with and which ones they weren't, because we're getting ready to deploy. I did it one time, and I did it again a second time at Aviano, and it really frustrated them. But I thought it was the right thing to do, to challenge the status quo. And then on top of that, that approach actually changed how we started doing inspections across the Air Force. And so the aspect of doing things that take and drive a little bit of risk. I did the same thing somewhat similarly as I became the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So I testified and had my confirmation to be the Chief of Staff of the Air Force on the 11th of May. On the 25th of May, George Floyd was killed. And I was really thinking about my confirmation, because you don't want to screw up your confirmation by doing something risky. But our son, who was back here in Washington, D.C., and we were in Hawaii, and I was the commander of Pacific Air Forces. And he called us on a Sunday, and he was pretty distraught. And he said, in the conversation, he said, "Dad, what is PACAF going to say?" And I was the commander of PACAF. What he was really asking me is, "Dad, what are you going to say?" And I was waiting for confirmation. My confirmation was held up. And so when I came to work on Monday, the staff said, "Hey, you should get confirmed on Tuesday." Tuesday came and went. And so I recorded a video, what I'm thinking about. And I posted it on that Thursday, and I got confirmed the following Tuesday, 98-0. Now, I knew I was taking a chance by taking that video, but I thought it was the right thing to do in my heart of hearts. And the video was really designed to go towards the airmen of Pacific Air Forces, but it went much broader than that. And I'm glad it did. But taking a chance like that, because I never imagined going on to be the Chief of Staff of the Air Force or the chairman, but being willing to take a chance and challenge the status quo. That's just to fail to succeed. I talked about success at the beginning, but your success is built on some of your failures. And I failed several times getting to this point of being the chairman. I was an AB student in high school. I remember in 11th grade, I got a C in social studies, and I cried. And then, I wanted to be an architect. That was my master plan, to be an architect. And my dad talked to me again about a pretty strong math background, and I should pursue engineering. So I went to Texas Tech to pursue a dual degree in architecture and civil engineering. And so my freshman year, I had to take freehand drawing. That is the only F as a final grade in my academic record. I did a retake and got a C the next semester. And then spring of my sophomore year, there's a design course that you have to have a C in. I got a D in. And I wasn't going to wait another year to be an architect, so I dropped architecture. I was able to graduate with a GPA less than a 3.0 and still become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. My next failure was actually in the Air Force. When I got to my first assignment at Kunsan Air Base, Korea, one of the things you have to do is you do a check ride to make yourself a combat-ready F-16 pilot. And so we have these little 25-pound practice bombs, and once you hit the button, let it come off the airplane, it's supposed to come in within a certain criteria. Well, mine was well outside the criteria, so I failed my initial check ride. And so you really don't have a second chance at a first impression. And the thing here is, I knew some things I wanted to do, get to weapons school as part of my career, but the challenge there is I didn't do so well just getting started. I think the other thing I would also say is I was the only African American in my squadron. And so that was a little bit added pressure there as well. But the point there is, once I dug myself that hole, I dug myself out of that hole. And the thing I think about when you do have failure, because you will have failure, is that failure a barrier where you have a pity party? Or is it a stepping stone where you learn from your failure and you move up and move on? And I'll just tell you that not only as a more junior officer, even as a senior officer, there's some things, in hindsight, I would have done a little bit differently. But by and large, though, from everything that happens, I learned something. And I still consider myself a learning leader. I still read books on leadership. My podcasts I listen to are on leadership. I don't listen to music when I work out. I listen to podcasts and books. But I'm always trying to learn, because one of my goals is to go to bed smarter every day than when I woke up. And so those are my 5 points of advice. Define success, have attitude, trust but verify, challenge the status quo, and fail to succeed. And so hopefully there's maybe a point or two in there that I share with you today that will be helpful to, no matter what age you are, as you think about what it is you want to do next. And so I'll stop and open it up for questions.
General Brown, thank you for taking the time today. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Blackburn, active duty service, and I want to ask a question real quick. You got a lot of young future leaders in this room today, and in a few years, many of them are going to take their right arm and they're going to swear to the Constitution and the oath that we take to serve in this country. And I believe that story is best reflected in all of the veterans that have spoken today and yesterday, and the value of their own service. And if you could just provide, in your mind, what does that oath mean to you, and what's your advice to these young warriors as they take that step in the next few years?
I think, thanks for the question. When I think about the oath, I think I have a lot of reflection about not only what the oath means, but how it's impacted my life. And the first time I had to take the oath, it was for my ROTC scholarship, basement of Holden Hall at Texas Tech University. It was kind of I didn't fully appreciate it then. When I was commissioned as second lieutenant, my father gave me the oath. That was very meaningful. The fact that my father was starting to choke up when he did it. And I'm trying to, I'm just trying to be second lieutenant and go, come on, Dad. But then throughout my career, having done promotion ceremonies where I administer the oath, or have done it for enlistments, and how important it is to raise your right hand and take an oath. It's important to defend the Constitution, because not everybody can do this. And for those that have served, those that are serving, and those that will serve, it's a pretty big task. And it was highlighted up here by the previous panel, how they've lost others who rose their right hand in defense of the Constitution and our nation. I spoke at an event earlier this week, and I spoke about two guys that were in my squadron that I lost. One, when I was we were first lieutenants at Kunsan. Josh Levin, who was supposed to come to our wedding, but was killed about 4 months prior in an aircraft accident. And Dave Broder, who was a lieutenant in my squadron when I was a squadron commander, he was killed by a green and blue attack in Afghanistan back on the 27th of April of 2011. And so when I think about the oath, I think about all those that serve and how the aspect of how important it is that we have trust. My first day in the office as a chairman, I wrote out a memo to the Joint Force. I had 3 expectations in the memo. The third one was trust is the foundation of our profession. And that trust is built on how we carry ourselves as military members, how we carry ourselves as veterans, and how we carry ourselves as cadets and midshipmen that are going to be part of our force. To me, it's hugely important. And thanks for the question. There's one right here.
Afternoon, General Brown. Tyler Shortino from Virginia Tech. My question for you is, each generation of soldiers for the military has changed since World War II to the generation we are now. What is one piece or one constant for service and leadership that we as future leaders should know? And what is one thing that you think will change with the new generation?
Well, I think the one thing that doesn't change is, as military leaders, how you care for your fellow service members. Those to your left and your right, those that are above you and those that are below you. I think that to me is one of the most important things. It's not only the previous question on the oath, but it's also the camaraderie you build. My best friend lives here in Washington, D.C. We were roommates on a deployment to Norway as captains, and we stayed in touch. You have lifelong relationships. In the aspect of how any one of us is, I think the previous panel demonstrated as well, willing to lay down our lives for those that will go into combat with us. That part doesn't change. I think what will change is probably the aspects of the character warfare. And if you think about how warfare has changed, traditional domains of land and maritime, about 100 years ago we added air, and now you have cyber and space. And you add into that artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and just technology. And there's a fascination with drones right now, but it's not just about drones. It's all the other technology that comes in that you will have an opportunity to operate in. I think the key point that will change is we've got to go faster to get you the capability you're going to need. And that's exactly why, as the Air Force Chief, I wrote Accelerate, Change, or Lose, because I thought we weren't going fast enough. Because I thought there was additional risk. Losing a major conflict, losing credibility, losing allies and partners, but losing quality service members because, you have probably an iPhone 17 in your pocket, but when you come to work, you get an iPhone 8. That's not where we need to be. We need to have capability, because I don't want a fair fight. I wanted to make it so that our adversaries wake up every day and go, not today, because of the capabilities we have and the service members we have. And that is probably the most important tool. Everything we have is a static display without our service members. But we owe it to them to make sure they have the technology and the capability to do the JOB when the nation asks. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.